So okay, so it could be any of these things that you probably think about. But design is so much more than that. So it's more than what meets the eye. It's more than what you see. There, at its very core, design is problem solving. So I'm sure that that this is something that may have come up for you too. That at its core, design is problem solving. So, if we look at who is a designer, anyone who's fixed or created anything is a designer. So, you can ask yourself if you're a designer, and the answer is yes. Even a small child is a designer because they're coming up with their own imaginary, houses with their building blocks. You're creating something new, you're making something from scratch. You're a designer, you're trying to fix something. Maybe it's broken, or maybe you feel like it could be better, and you're already a designer. We're all natural designers. Yeah, so even if we look at, say, for example, the simple water bottle, right? So, if you take into account what made people create a water bottle, it would have been the idea of solving the problem of quenching your thirst. So, maybe people had to kind of move around and not always be close to a source of water. So, they wanted some way to carry water with them. And maybe it started off, I'm guessing it could have been animal skin or something, is when it could have started off long ago. And now it's evolved to this water bottle. And today, a water bottle is made of so many different materials. It's made in so many different styles for a lot of different capacities. And it's constantly evolving and changing. There's the way you drink water from a water bottle is there are so many different types of water bottles based on how you like to drink your water, how big you want the mouth to be. Do you want a sipper cup? Do you want an easy to hold handle? What you prefer? So there's constant evolution to something that's already invented, and this is a continuous process that will always happen, especially with our everyday objects. Sometimes we feel like some things have reached a point of saturation. There's nothing more to design, and that's when it stops. A lot of the products that we use today are somewhere close to that. We have so many things being already designed, all the way to something like an apple cutter. So in terms of products, I think we have done a lot of design work already. And if we're going to look at what can be designed, of course we spoke of products, but there are things, and there are services, and there are experience that can be designed. So if we're looking at things, as I said, anything that you can see and touch is designed. And services, something that is so much more common in our lives these days. Apps on our phones that help us do so many things, right from getting our food to our transportation to our holidays to everything, is all designed. And of course, experiences, throwing parties, vacations, weddings. People spend a lot of time designing what that experience would be like. And I'm sure this list is limited. I'm sure there's so much more, but these are the top three things that come to mind in terms of what can be designed. So we just spoke about how everyone's a designer. So if we're going to look at everyone as a designer, we'll have to think a little bit about what makes a good designer, right? So here are some values that I think would be very essential for someone to be a good designer. To start off with, it's very important to have these qualities. To start with, curiosity. So, a good designer is always curious. A good designer is constantly looking out and trying to see what's going on, what's working well, what's not, what's happening, why is it happening that way. So that's a quality that's always there with any good designer. And along with that comes empathy. So always putting yourself in other people's shoes, understanding what they must be going through, and thinking through life through their eyes helps people become a good designer. And optimism is also very important because being a designer inherently means that you're optimistic because you see uh, you see things being better in some way, and you also see things being improved in some way. So that itself puts you in a state of optimism. Because if you're pessimistic and if you're thinking, oh, this is never going to be better and this can't be changed, this is just how it is, then it's difficult to get into the designer mindset because then you can't really think of how you can make things better. So it's very important to be an optimist if you're a designer. And grit is also very important because grit means that you will persevere no matter what. Because as a designer, you're constantly faced with some kind of rejection of your idea. Maybe you have some ideas, maybe you put it out, and maybe you find that it's not working. So just the ability to keep going and not give up easily is also extremely important as a designer, and generally as a human going through life. I think grit is so important. And of course, creativity. I believe that everyone is creative, and creativity is something that can be exercised and nurtured. And as I also believe that everyone's a designer, so I think all of these skills are something that can be brought out to the surface. And I think all of you can do great as designers in whatever field you're in, whether you're an engineer, whether you're into literature, wherever you are. I'm sure that the qualities of being, you are a designer in your own way. All of you are also probably going to do your own projects as part of your courses at some point, and you will be designing something maybe from scratch or trying to make something better. So these are all very important qualities to have overall. So here is, one second, I'm trying to go back. Yeah, and of course, another very important thing is a strong sense of Wuja Day. So I'm sure you may have all heard of deja vu. That is the feeling that this moment has happened before. Um, so Wuja Day is the opposite of deja vu. So Wuja Day means seeing something that you've already seen before, like you're seeing it for the first time. So it could be something as simple as brushing your teeth, right? You do it all the time. But if you're starting to look at it as something that you're doing for the first time, as with like fresh eyes and not as something that you're always doing, that's Vuja Day. And here's a small video explaining what Vuja Day can do. That is being able to see with new eyes. Just one second.
About 10 years ago, we got approached by one of the largest oral healthcare companies in America, a company you've probably heard of called Oral-B. And they said, look, we'd like a new kid's toothbrush because ours is starting to get commoditized. It looks like a lot of kids' toothbrushes out there, and you can't have that. We want to be special, right? So we say, okay, we'll do this. We want to go out in the field and do some field research. And they're kind of not sure about that. Like, it's not rocket science. We're talking about kids brushing their teeth. How hard could that be, right? They would really like us to stop fooling around and start designing, right? But we want to go through this process, this observation process, because we think almost always you can spot opportunities. So we go out, and we're on like the first day of observations, and we make a small discovery. The small discovery we make is that every kid's toothbrush in the history of the world has had the same implicit assumption. It's a logical assumption, it just isn't exactly right, which is the assumption always was parents have big hands, kids have small hands, and so when you want to make the kids' version, make it like the parents' brush, only smaller and skinnier. Perfectly logical. And little tiny humans want brushing their teeth. And what you notice right away, you get a 5-year-old boy brushing his teeth. He's not holding his toothbrush in his fingertips the way mom and dad do. He's fisting it. He's holding it like this because he doesn't have the dexterity. He doesn't have the fine motor controls that his parents have. And so he's got to hold it like this. In fact, the other thing he does is he holds the brush too far up very frequently. And so he's punching himself in the face as he's trying to brush his teeth. And we solved that problem too. But the main thing was came back in the field and said, uh-oh, kids don't need little skinny toothbrushes. Kids need big fat toothbrushes, right? Let's make them big fat squishy toothbrushes. And you may have noticed now every toothbrush company in the world makes these, but our client reports that after we made that little tiny discovery out in the field, sitting in a bathroom watching a 5-year-old boy brush his teeth, they had the best-selling kids toothbrush in the world for 18 months. So when you think about power, when you think about, credibility, if you could go out in the field and do that observation and come up with that finding, and your company, your organization was the best in its field for years, would that be worth it? I think just use your powers of observation, have that part of your brain turned up as high as you can all along. About
Okay, I hope you all were able to hear that clearly. So, isn't that fascinating? Just what we inherently assume may sometimes or quite often be wrong, right? So, just the idea of making like fat or toothbrushes made a world of a difference for the entire world. So, a good designer has the ability to look at what is and reimagine what it ought to be. So, you're always looking at what is, and if you're able to see whatever it is, just the way it is, and see small issues, that means you have great observational skills, and you're able to think like a designer. So, if we're going to look at, okay, so we just spoke a lot about what being a designer is, what thinking like a designer is, and now we're going to move on to design thinking itself. So design thinking is actually thinking like a designer. So design thinking at its core is just the process of problem solving, and it's the process of problem solving by prioritizing the end user's needs more than anything else. I know this whole thing seems really intuitive, sometimes even obvious, but this is just almost like a framework to help people think and sort of follow these principles, because we quite often we look at a problem and we may jump to a solution, when what we actually need to do is we need to look at the problem and ask why that problem is happening. Maybe there's some underlying reasons. Quite often what we see is on the surface, and what it actually takes is deeper observation to understand the roots of a problem and then solve for that. So that's what design thinking aims to do. It's helping people think the way a designer thinks. So it's about really understanding what the user needs are, and coming up with ideas and testing them out over and over again. So you come up with an idea, you put it out, you test it. It may work, it may not work. Maybe it partially works and there are some things that need to be fixed. You take it back, you take the feedback, and then you try again, and then you try again. So that's just how this whole thing works. So that's design thinking. So there are I've made it like really simple for all of us in today's session to understand design thinking. So these are the three steps, I would say, that are really important. That's feel, think, and do. And we'll go a little deeper into this before we get into our activity. So with feel. So feel is the first phase of designing. So with feel, what you're trying to do is you're trying to go under the surface, um, and empathize deeper. You see a problem or you see something going on, and you kind of try to look at it with fresh eyes and see why it's happening. Maybe with that example from the video, you saw how kids were probably, almost like aggressively brushing their teeth, kind of punching themselves in the face with it. So if you kind of look at it with fresh eyes and see why they're behaving the way they're behaving, it could be because of their grip, which is what they figured out through Wuja DA. So that's a problem that is under the surface. If you just look at the problem just on the surface, maybe you would just be like, oh, this kid doesn't know how to hold and do this. And maybe once you start looking at more kids, you realize more kids are doing the exact same thing. So that's what it takes to like deeply empathize and deeply like look at what's going on. Observation is also a very important skill. That is, like, if you're a fly on the wall, that is, you're not interfering with what's going on, you're just like a silent observer. So there are many people who like people watching. That's a very interesting thing to do, especially, but unfortunately right now we're not in a situation where we can watch people. But it's a wonderful thing to see how, just quietly observe how people behave. What are certain things that, that are constantly happening. It could even be just watching people right outside, your window. Maybe somebody's walking on the pavement. Maybe you see two, three people trip on the same pavement, and you realize, hey, this it's not just somebody's lack of judgment in seeing an upturned stone on the pavement. It could be that this is a real problem there. So just the power of observation is really, really important. And of course, talking to people about what delights them and what bothers them. That's also something that is very essential if you're a designer. um, like paying attention, even if you don't ask people, people are constantly talking about what they like and what they don't like. People are constantly, they'll tell you automatically. Even if you're at a gathering, if you're at a wedding, they'd be like, oh, it's this wedding so great, the lights are amazing, the music is great. And if something's bothering them, maybe they're standing around and they're not able to eat peacefully, and they're like, oh, it's so difficult to eat this food, or something like that. The people are constantly talking about what they like and what they don't like. Pay attention to what they're saying. And you can, as a designer, you can think of what could be done differently to make things better. So that's the question that that could constantly be on your mind. That is asking why questions. That is, why is somebody feeling the way that they're feeling, and what could be done to make them feel better. So feel is the first phase of design thinking. It's about finding the roots, seeing what's under the surface. And then the next phase is do. Sorry, think. I'm sorry, I'm not able to go back. Yeah, think. So, thinking is exercising your creative brain in being able to come up with lots of ideas. So, it's what we always say is quantity over quality when it comes to brainstorming. I'm sure most of you are used to hearing quality over quantity, which is usually the preferred thing when it comes to anything. But over here, when it comes to ideas, I'd say go for quantity, because once you start thinking about, oh, this is a better idea, or maybe I should focus on this idea, then you kind of start to narrow yourself to not really think outside of those ideas. So, quantity, always just let all the crazy ideas flow, just keep letting everything come out, So, that's what it means to like properly brainstorm with someone, come up with as many ideas as possible, to reimagine the way everything is right now, to be absolutely better. And to reframe what would, if you see something in a form that you don't like, what would the opposite of that look like? What would the exact opposite, most positive scenario of this situation, what would that look like? It could be for a product, it could be for a service, or it could be for an experience. I'm sure all of you at some point of time have faced situations where you're not happy with a service, or you're not happy with a product, or maybe you're not happy with an experience. So really thinking of what would the ideal situation be like would be really helpful. So now I've been talking for so long, I'm gonna give you all a minute, I'd say, to come up with 20 ideas of what a chair could be used for. So we use a chair to sit. I want you to think of 20 other things you can do with a chair. And I'm going to be quiet for about 30 seconds and let you all come up with something. Like, actually write it down. If you have a piece of paper and a pencil, if you don't, please get one, and actually write it down. Okay, and 5 seconds. Okay. Ideally, I would have liked to have all of this be a little more interactive and hear from you all and like maybe interact in the chat box. But right now, it's going to be hard since there are so many of you in the session. So just like I some of the obvious things that have come to my mind with this exercise is maybe using a chair to fix a light bulb. You can use it as a ladder to climb. I don't know how many of you have done this, but at some point of time you may have dried your clothes on a chair, or maybe you've used it as an extra space to store stuff. Maybe if it's raining and you have to go from point A to B and you have a plastic chair and there's nothing else, you can use it as an umbrella. Like there's tons of random things that you can do with a chair, and if you really think about it, and if you can like really go crazy with your ideas, I'm sure all of us can come up with about like 20 things. This is just a quick exercise to show you that you can push your brain to think about crazy ideas and to think about quantity over quality of ideas. So a lot of these times, the crazy ideas can lead to something really innovative. Okay, so we're done with the feel phase, we're done with the think phase, and now we're going to the do phase. So another thing that we're all very used to is being really neat with our work, with school, and with everything. We've always been told that that always have to submit everything. It has to be neat. Your first model has to be excellent, and all of that. But the truth is that often, if you want to get things done, and if you want to get things done fast, you end up being a little bit messy. Maybe you just put something together to see how it feels. So the idea is to get it out and to get feedback. So that's why I've said be messy, because say I'm prototyping a new water bottle, and maybe I decide the shape. Hello, I'm not sure if I was being heard. Sorry. Yeah, 1 second. Okay, it just said that I had to unmute, so I'm a little bit confused. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, back to this. So the idea that putting something out and getting feedback before you spend too much time on it, and before you make it like a finished product, is very important, because then you can get feedback and make the changes at the early stages before you spend too much of your time and money and energy on making it. So that's what we have to do with the last phase of design thinking. Especially for products, you can flesh it out with models and prototypes. With services and experiences, you can first bring them alive through storyboards. So storyboards are like comic strips. If you have to draw a comic strip of, say, how Uber works, then you would start with from the time a person is thinking about going somewhere. You may think about, oh, okay, there's some event coming up and somebody has to move from point A to B and they don't have their own vehicle. So you start from there and you can sketch out the complete storyboard of what it would be like to use the app, to get into the cab, the whole experience of riding in the cab. What is that like, and getting out of the cab, and and then continuing on your journey. So just sketching out that whole thing. Or maybe if you're looking at a party, what would it be like from the beginning till the end? So kind of sketching it out like a comic strip, or even writing about it, is a great way to kind of think through what that would be like, in terms of doing. So that's one way to approach doing, before you can actually put it out there as a prototype. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the activity that I was telling you all about. And the activity that we're having for today is redesigning the gift giving experience. So I hope you all have a paper and a pen with you. And in case you don't, please get one. I'll give you a few, um, maybe like 20 seconds to get one, and then we can start. Like really get one. I know like many of you must be lying on your bed and too lazy to get up and move around, but this will really help. Another 5 seconds, and 3, 2, 1. Okay, so first I want you to think of a special someone, a close friend or someone who you really like, whose birthday is coming up. So I want you to think about them, and I want you to write down their name on this piece of paper. Okay, next. Your objective for today is getting a gift that's useful, meaningful, and that demonstrates that demonstrates your thoughtfulness, that you really care about them. So, how would you go about planning this gift? If we're going to use the design thinking principles, okay, something's going on with this, but okay, let's ignore that and keep going. So with step one, we've got feel. So first, you need to know your subject. Most probably, you already know this person who you and you've always known them for a long time. But there is also a possibility that this person is someone new in your life, who you don't really know that well, who you're trying to, maybe it's a new friend, or maybe, maybe it's a new girlfriend or a boyfriend. It could be anything. So maybe you're like starting to learn more about them, and this is a great way to kind of understand who they are and what they really like. So first step is to observe and to listen. You're going to understand their likes and their dislikes, and why do they like it or why do they dislike it. This is also very important. It's not just important that you know what their likes are, but knowing their dislikes also really helps. Dislikes could be anything. It could be maybe they have a pet, and maybe they're walking their pet around, and they have to pick up after their pet, and maybe they dislike doing that. And you could make their life a lot easier by getting them one of those devices that makes it easy to pick it up. Or maybe it could be something as simple as, I don't know, this is just an example of a dislike. Or maybe they really like doing something, like maybe they like, say, running or some kind of activity. Maybe they like baking. And then you can start thinking about what would help them enhance that activity. So you could also talk to others who are close to them and observe their habits or their hobbies closely. And then you could start thinking about what do they value. So, do they value personalized or handmade thoughtful gifts? Is that something that's very important to them? Do they feel very loved when somebody does something by hand? Or are they a little more practical? Do they prefer something more useful, something more tangible? Or do they feel most loved when they have quality time or experiences? I know that right now quality time and experiences are hard to do, but it is still possible to do that over video conferencing like Zoom, arranging for something where people feel loved by all their close ones. So, of course, so these are all different things to kind of think about. And how do they like to spend their time? So what are what are their hobbies? What are the spaces they like to spend time in? Is there anything that could enhance their experience in this space? Is there something that will really liven up their room? Could it be like a new lamp or some kind of fairy lights or something like that? Or it could be just a very comfy cushion, or anything, absolutely anything that can help enhance the space. Is there something missing that they don't even know that could add value to them? They've never even thought that such a thing existed, and then you give them something that helps solve some problem that they've been facing. So that could be amazing. So these are all questions to think about with the feel phase. You're just trying to get a deeper understanding of this person, trying to really observe carefully. Even people who you already know well, you may not have thought about them in this way. So this is a good way to start thinking about gifting more deeply. So okay, step 2, we're going to think. So this part of the process, you're just going to come up with a lot of ideas. What could add value to their life and be good for them? um, you've already written down their name, and we've gone through the feel phase. If you haven't already, please write down about 5 things that you think this person really likes to do. It could be their hobbies, it could be what they're passionate about, it could be just thinking about their space, it could be absolutely anything. So please write those things down. And now in the think phase, you're going to come up with 10 ideas for packaging, 10 ideas for the experience, and 10 ideas for the gift itself. And as I said, let it be crazy. You don't have to overthink it. Just write it all out. And even the craziest ideas sometimes are awesome. So just go for it. I'll give you about, let's say, a minute for 10 ideas for packaging, a minute for experiences, and a minute for gift giving. So I'll give you 3 minutes overall. And if you haven't yet already done the feel phase, please do that. Packaging can be really fun and crazy. I once had a friend who put who got a very simple small gift, and then he packaged it about like 20 times and made it really hard to get to the real gift itself. And so unpacking the gift itself was an experience. That itself was fun. So it could be absolutely anything. It could be hiding like small surprises in between the packaging. It could be eco-friendly packaging, doing it with newspaper. It could be anything. You can come up with so many ideas with packaging. And experience itself, it could be how the gift is delivered. Maybe they find it, maybe it's a surprise. Maybe you get somebody in their home to hide it somewhere and they discover it. Maybe you get it delivered. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they just walk into the room and it's already there, like bright and shining, like right in the middle. It could be anything at all. And the gift itself, of course, you know the person best and you can think it through. So yeah, I'll give you another minute. Okay, it's a little bit odd that I can't hear you all or interact with you all, but I hope you all have done this, because this is something I think everyone can relate to. Giving a gift. Okay, Like moving on, we can look for patterns now that you've had a burst of ideas. Maybe you see some commonalities among your ideas. Maybe some of your ideas kind of group together or around, or they're around like the same theme. Maybe you've identified a certain hobby you definitely want to fuel in some way, or something of that sort. So put those similar ideas together and let the unique ideas stand out. Maybe there are certain ideas which you can group together. Maybe there are some ideas which are just like which totally stand out. Those could be shining too. You could totally go with that too. So grouping is also something that we do a lot in design thinking, especially when we brainstorm. We let a lot of ideas out, and once we let a lot of ideas out, we try to group similar ideas together to see emerging themes and patterns. Okay, so this is the think phase, and after this we will be moving on to the do phase. So once you take your top 3 ideas, or maybe you already have that one idea out and ready, and let's take it to the next level with do, where you make it happen. So just plan and execute. So maybe sometimes you could test this idea. Obviously, since this is a gift, you can't really test it with the person itself. But of course, there could be smaller hints which could help, you know, figure out whether or not they're inclined towards this. Maybe you could even test it with by asking somebody who's close to them, maybe their family, maybe close friends, and see how this particular gift may work with them. So getting that feedback could be great and help you with the do phase. That's the tiny prototype that you could possibly do at that point. Yes, and with that, I think we've come to the end of this session, because and the overall real crux of design thinking is in seeing, and in just pursuing, coming up with ideas and pursuing them relentlessly. So the real act of discovery comes not from finding new lands, but in seeing with new eyes. The whole concept of Vujadi. So I thought that was a really good quote to end this with. Thank you all for spending your Saturday morning with me. I'm sure many of you may already find a lot of the concepts and things that I'd spoken about very intuitive, very natural, something that we all naturally itself do. The thing that design thinking does is that it gives us this framework to go deeper into each of these phases, so that we're not really jumping to a solution or a conclusion before we've done enough of the research and really understanding something. And there are so many the process of design thinking itself has it can take a while, especially if you are going to design a product or a service or an experience. Each of these phases you can really deep dive into it. You can take that research to the next level. You can do a whole lot. So especially if you are someone who is trying to create a new project for your NSEM, or if I'm here seeing some hands raised. Yes, we'll go to question and answer session also soon. I'll see how how we can make that work. Yeah, so we could I'm thinking of doing a full day session sometime. So if you're interested in that, please do answer the poll and leave your email address, and then we can see how we can go about that. Okay. Thank you so much. And over to Anand, and we'll figure out
Right.
what the next steps could be.
Right. That was very informative and very interestingly done, Vindhya. So thanks a lot for that. And ironically, a lot of people in the audience wanted to make it a little more interactive. And well, I understand where you guys are coming from, but please understand, with 100 odd people in the audience, it becomes very difficult for the presenter to interact with the audience right and then and there. But we're open to questions now. I think please raise your hands. We'll allow you to unmute yourself, ask your questions directly. Anything you want to say or ask, right now is the time to do that. Yes, Kritika.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me, Vindhya?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can hear you. Hi.
Okay, so first of all, the session was really amazing and I loved it. And secondly, my question is like, are you typically involved in the strategy or the concept phase of a project?
Okay, you're asking about the phase of a project I'm involved with, right? With my work.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I am more involved with a user experience research. So that is the field phase of any project. So that is doing ethnographic interviews, really understanding how any product or service, how it's working, how people are liking it, how people are engaging with it, what could be better, what needs to be tweaked, all of that. So that's what I'm most interested in, and that's part of the thing that I'm more involved in right now. Does that answer your question? Would you like to know more about this? You can always connect with me outside of this also, if you're interested in this field.
Um, okay, I think she's muted herself now. But certainly hope that answers your question, Kritika. Um, okay. She says she wants to continue. Just raise your hand again if you want to ask again. I think that's the process, right? I should be able to see you on top. It's just that with 100 people, finding every single person is a little hard. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it does answer my question. Thank you so much for that. And I'm really interested in designing and all. So I would like, how can I connect you outside this? Like, any way I can?
Sure, sure. So we'll try and enable that. Kritika, Vindhya is already part of our network. So I think one of the easiest ways in which you can connect with her is, just visit the website and ask for a one-to-one connection, and we'll just get that done.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, see you, Kritika. Glad you liked it.
Okay, we have another query from Shubham.
Okay. Hello,
Hi,
hello,
Shubham.
Vindhya. Good morning, good afternoon, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, Shubham. How are you doing?
I'm fine, sir. So actually, I had a query. So regarding the user experience aspect of design, so
Mm-hmm.
I wish some guidance regarding that, some resources where I could go and understand the whole user experience of a website
Mm-hmm.
and how to approach while designing a website. So I wanted some guidance regarding that and how to apply design thinking to it.
Okay. So that is a very a good question. You're already interested in this field, and there are already a lot of videos and things outside that I'll try to connect with you, and I'll try to link you up with certain things if you're interested in learning more about user experience design and courses that are aligned to this. You could do some preliminary courses, and if you're actually thinking of pursuing a career in user experience design, then yeah, we can look into a whole bunch of options. For now, I know that there are a lot of free resources available for learning these things online itself. You could see it on YouTube. There's Coursera courses. There are multiple things. If you do a search, you will be able to find quite a few. I myself have looked through some of these, and if you want more specific ones, I can probably connect with you, help you search, and find some. All the best, Shubham.
I think Shubham, the general sense is that today's session was more like an intro session, right? So setting a base to understand what design thinking is. I think that's the brief that me and Vindhya worked with for today's session, assuming that the audience does not have any idea on what design thinking is about, right? So, but the moment you start to get deeper into it, I think maybe what Vindhya ma'am is saying is that you do your own research for a bit and get into a space of exploration, and then I'm sure she'll be able to guide you further. Does that
Yeah,
help?
today's I just did it as the most basic. In fact, even though it's very basic, it's actually the fundamentals that we're all using all the time. Everything, it's the same thing that we use. So I just made it something that is accessible to everyone who's not even heard of design thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it did made a lot of make a lot of sense because we understood not just about why, but also how it gets used. I think, which was quite an eye opener.
Mhm.
Okay. We have Madhav who wants to ask us a question. Madhav, I'm asking you to unmute yourself so you can come ask us. Yes, Madhav.
Yeah, hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. Hope all of us are
Right.
healthy and sound in our homes today. Ma'am, I have a question that even after we think about a solution to a problem, a lot of times we don't have the technical merit to put that on an executive level. In fact, me myself, I'm working on an automotive solution, so I don't
Hmm.
have the enough merit. So in such a case, what do we do?
Okay. So you're saying as you come up with a solution for a problem, you cannot solve it on your own. Of course, we are all. It's very difficult to do such a thing, and that's why we have teams. We have we that's why we collaborate with others, and that's why together we can do things. So if you are doing something for your final year project, or if you're trying to work on something and you feel you don't have the skills that you need in order to implement the ideas that you have, I would suggest that you try to collaborate with others who have those skills, and see if that's possible, even if it means that you need to cross collaborate across departments and do certain things. You could even ask your teachers or professors ways in which you could try to take this forward. That's what comes to my mind. When I was doing my course, there are many times that this happens because, of course, one person doesn't have all the skills that it takes to execute a solution. It takes quite often a team of people with a lot of different skills coming together. And we collaborated across departments, and then we were able to do that. So if that is not already happening, and if you find that's already hard to do in your college and with this current situation, maybe you could try talking to maybe professors or others or student bodies and say, hey, like, just put it out. You'll be surprised. Like Dumbledore says, always comes reaches people when they ask for it. So like, put it out in student bodies. See, hey guys, I want to create this. I want to collaborate with somebody who has these skills. Can someone collaborate with me? I guess that's one way to do it. Keep trying, I guess. That's what I can think of right now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, sir.
I think
You're
that's a
welcome.
fascinating answer that Vindhya gives, because I think the general answer is that it would help if you could network with the right set of people and float your ideas and collaborate. And I think that's the magic mantra in today's day and age, right? It's just we're all cooped up indoors and we're trying to collaborate still over these constraints. All right.
Mhm. There's
I have,
Ramya and there's Kapil that I can see. Ramya's hand has been up
Ramya,
for.
I'm just allowing you to. Yes, Ramya, please ask us your question now. Ramya?
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
I
hear
can
you.
hear you. Yes.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. I just wanted to ask like how design making can help in other educational fields. Like I'm from tourism industry and how can I cope up with design making in my field actually?
Okay.
Okay. So, so you said you're studying tourism and you're wondering how design thinking can be applied there. Design thinking can be applied in absolutely every field. Okay, let's take tourism for example, because you're in that field. With tourism, you are looking at tourism itself is an experience. It's an experience design. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with, say, from the moment somebody is thinking about wanting a vacation, why they want a vacation, what are their core needs, and then designing for that. And if you're looking at tourism, there's like multiple forms of tourism, right? You could categorize it into say people who are like doing some tourism to see, say, there's pilgrimage, there's like looking at old temples, there's vacation by the beach, there's adventurous activities. You have so many different types and ways that people choose to go about tourism. So really designing tourism in a way where you're designing for people's underlying needs would be like, you can use design thinking that way, right? Like maybe you design your services in a way that caters to people's needs very specifically, so that you're not putting somebody who who wants to do one activity into another activity. Say for example, what comes to my mind is I went on a trip with my extended family. We'd all gone to Bali together a couple of years ago, and it was like one of the big trips, international trip. We've barely done that with extended family, and that's already so rare. So everybody wanted different things. The young kids wanted to like climb this mountain, go river rafting, and all that. And then the older people wanted like different things. So you're already stuck in a family who wants to do people want to do different things, right? So then we just had one adventurous uncle take care of all the adventurous kids, and then some other relative who's going with something else. So we all split up as a family. We were able to do these things and then come back. So designing tourism in a way that caters to people's needs, um, that's where design thinking can come in place. It can be very useful, I think, for tourism and for other things as well. I hope this in some way answers your question or gives you some ideas. I know I jumped to
I
solutions,
think
which
once you mute yourself, you need permission to again unmute. Yes, Ramya.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
okay.
Um, In fact, it also evokes this memory of, this is a constant conversation that we have with people who visited, countries outside India. Because, the way that, countries abroad package museums and their heritage and the way it's done in India. And I think there's a big design problem waiting to be solved out there.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
we have a question now from, I think, not sure. I think that person lowered their hands. Don't see that anymore. Guys, if you have any more questions, please do raise your hand. I'll be glad to unmute. Yes, got it.
Kapil Kalyan.
Yes, Kalyan.
Yeah, thank you for this amazing session, ma'am, first of all.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, can I know the strategies or methods which have been involved to interact more and more people with that relevant field? For example, I am making a design relevant to automobile. So what could be the more and more interaction methods are involved to know the feedback of that system? Is there any
I'm
specific
so sorry.
strategies?
Could you
Yeah, ma'am.
strategies
So,
that would?
strategies that would help us to get more and more feedback from that relevant people if we are designing any product. For example, as you said, if we are related to the traveling, so to get the feedback from the people or the tourists, so what would be the strategies or methods that are involved to know their feedback so that we can design a better, right? So this is the
Yeah,
question, ma'am. Is there any strategies? Or yeah?
yes, of course, there are so many strategies. It's a very good question. In fact, right now you can see one of the strategies, which is a survey, which is right in front of you. But the best way to really understand how people feel is you want to get feedback when they can authentically give feedback. A lot of times what would happen is if you are doing something and then you go and ask your best friend and then you ask your parents and other people, how is it, how what do you think about this product, they'll say, oh, it's very good, because they are close to you and they want to obviously protect your feelings and things like that. One important thing with feedback is to remove or detach yourself from whatever you've designed. It could be your product, it could be an experience, it could be anything. You should not feel bad if somebody else says that, hey, actually I think this is not working out well. I know your question is about what are the strategies, and I'm first talking about how to deal with feedback itself. The strategies are multiple. Of course, there's surveys. It depends on how many people are out using this product. And if it's a product that many people are using, there's qualitative and there's quantitative feedback. So you can get quantitative feedback, like short feedback surveys like that. But the best feedback is qualitative feedback, where you can see that the person is completely authentic. You're allowing the person to feel completely free to talk about what they really like and what they don't like about a certain product. So say ideally it would be good if you're able to talk to them one on one. If it's a product that you've created and that you've put out, maybe if it's like 10 to 20 people, it's ideal to kind of get a one-on-one kind of feedback. It could come up in casual conversation. The best way to do it is it's not like you're having this meeting to only hear the feedback. You're in a setting where it's already very comfortable, and the conversation is going. One of the things, even with interviewing for like the field phase, understanding user experience research, is to allow people to feel as comfortable as possible, and not have them do it, say, in a very formal setting. I have like some tea, chill with them, crack some jokes, talk to them, and then get this feedback. So yeah, it depends. It's very specific to what the product is, how the product is being used, who's using the product, how many people are using the product. So based on that, there are different strategies. If there's something specific that you're doing and you want to know that, you can connect with me right after and we can discuss what you could do. Is that okay?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you. And one more question, ma'am. Can I ask?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, for example, if you are hiring a design architect, what would be the first quality that you are going to be observing him? Sir, what is the expected first quality that you are going to be like from him, or you want to be from him?
In a design architect, is it?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I would just say generally in a designer, I've already laid out those things in my presentation. What are the values for that would make a good designer? So I would look out, if somebody is looking to hire, some of the basic qualities that anybody is looking for is someone who is enthusiastic, eager to learn, has all of the right values. And of course, as a designer, you would be looking for someone who is already having the skills that are needed for that specific type of design. Maybe you have some of the basic skills and maybe you have the ability to learn, to top up those skills. Maybe there are some, okay, let's take architecture for example. If you're hiring, people hiring for an architect would first look for qualities, would first look at their existing portfolio, the kind of work that they've done. They would also look at the values and qualities that they would bring in. Is this somebody who is who's hardworking, who's willing to put in extra work to learn a little bit of new software? Somebody who is, you know, I think I'm going very deep into a very specific field right now, but I'd say curiosity, empathy, and the ability to be optimistic and take feedback very easily are qualities that are very appreciated in the design field. Yeah, I
I
hope
hope
that
he didn't
answers.
mean technical qualifications. I just hope he means, what are the personality traits.
General, yeah. I got into technical because I started thinking about all of those things, because it's hard to hire someone, like you can't tell, if they have these qualities right off the bat. You can't just say, hey, I have these qualities on my resume, and expect to be hired just for that. Of course, you need to have the some skills as well. But as a designer, when you're working together, it's important to have those qualities. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Great. Um, okay, are there any other questions, guys? I hope you enjoyed the session as much as I did. And I hope you, at least it makes sense. Uh, at least design thinking makes a lot more sense to you, and you're intrigued by this, and you go back and research on YouTube and Google, as India just said.
Mhm.
That looks like the audience has run out of ideas and questions. Um, yeah, if that's it, then we will bring this session to a close.
Mhm.
Many thanks to Vindhya. Thanks for taking time out on a Saturday. I know it's these are the tough times, and I wish you the very best going ahead. I know a lot of students have expressed interest in a webinar, in a workshop in the future. So
Mhm.
I will keep you in the loop on that. But thanks again for coming down or coming over today. Um, Thanks a lot to the ISEC team for putting this together, for getting us this audience, for facilitating, information about this webinar. I hope you guys have a successful event. And finally, thanks a lot to the audience. You've been patient. Some of you've been worried about it not being as interactive, but I certainly hope that we've done justice to at least the subject matter at hand. And at the end, I hope that we've been able to answer your queries.
I think we have another question.
Yes, just as we finish, I think Pawan's trying to ask me a question. Pawan?
Yes, so what is the major aspect in the designing, sir?
I think you mean Vindhya ma'am will answer. So could you
What is
repeat
the
your question?
major aspect in designing, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you be a little bit more specific? What are you thinking about? Major aspect in what
Major
sense?
importance in the future, upcoming future.
Oh, in upcoming future? Okay. Well, the importance of design in the future. Design,
Yes, ma'am.
as you can see, is very, very important, not only in the traditional sense of, say, graphic or visual design, but just designing of processes and systems. Everything is going through a process of redesign right now, especially with COVID, because the way businesses are running, the way anything is happening has completely changed and completely transformed, and requires new design. So design has always been important, and now it's more important than ever, especially in terms of services, experiences, user experience, and all of this is gaining more and more importance because of digitization. And yeah, so overall, I'd say, yeah, design is gaining a lot more importance and is coming to the forefront more than before.
I certainly hope that answers your question, Pawan. But I think I'm going to merge this. There was another question that came up in the chat. Pawan, you want to say something?
Nothing, sir.
Wonderful. So there was a question that came up in the chat, India, and I think that person has left. But I mean, just for the benefit of everybody else. So this person was asking, Pushkar was asking us, does design thinking work with all subject areas? And I guess that's broadly the theme that you just finished answering, that in today's day and age, I think it's multiple aspects that are completely getting overhauled. And so there's, design at play, I guess, every single field.
Yeah. If we look closely, we can apply design thinking in absolutely every field, absolutely anything. Even if you look at how, say, from every single thing, that every activity that you do, to every service that you interact with, absolutely everything. We had that question about tourism. I'm sure that if you think things through in whichever field that you're in, or even if you think of any field, you would be able to find a way to innovate a little bit further in that field. So yes,
Every single business, every single productive activity that happens, I guess, you could apply design thinking as a concept there, because there is an element of collaboration. There's a team, there are resources available, so you could design around it, right? So fascinating that you mentioned that concept. There's another question that comes from Prem. He's put this in the chat. Is there any fellowship program for this, like a university innovation fellowship, something like that? Is that available?
I'll have to do a little bit of research on this one. I don't know if I have the answer to this. I haven't heard of a design thinking fellowship of sorts. I think I will also have to do some research. I haven't checked on what exactly is happening right now, but there are courses on user experience design, service design, design thinking. There are many different names to it. It comes in many different forms. So there are courses in a lot of the big design schools on this. So yeah, there are these courses.
Okay.
To do a course.
And Usha is asking me, could you be a little more specific, give us more details about, she's trying to get into a specific area, mechanical engineering, right? How design, design would probably impact or contribute to mechanical engineering. I know you've answered this before, but
Absolutely. I I studied architecture. I had a couple of friends who were mechanical engineers. I know that for their final year project and just the work that they do, design is a very integral part of mechanical engineering, from what it seems like, because y'all are constantly designing. Y'all are designers already. So I don't have to tell you that design is an important part of your field, because you're already designers. You're already creating things or trying to make things better, be it changes in vehicles or transportation, or coming up with I don't know what all you do, but everything that you do, design is already an integral part of it. So because especially as an engineer, you're looking to solve problems. This is something that I saw when during the exhibitions, even in my college, as well as exhibitions that I attended in other colleges. Everyone is learning all of these skills. All the engineers are learning so many skills. You're learning to code, you're learning to program, you're learning AI, you're learning how to make stuff. But how you finally apply it and how you finally use it to make an impact on the world is where design thinking can help you. It can help you. Maybe you're designing something right, but are you designing the right things? It'll help you solve that question. Okay, you know how, you have these tools, you have AI and all of this, but are you using it to solve the right type of problem? Are you identifying the right type of problem to solve, and are you using it in the best of your capacity? So in the same way, I would say, even with mechanical engineering, it is it's the same thing. Even if you feel like, even if you feel like immediately the end user is not the person, the end user could be like, it could be this product is supporting another product to do something better. So it's like, it's all connected in its own way.
Absolutely. I think a very simple sort of a very simple way of just understanding the impact of design on mechanical engineering or that field would be, you look at automotive design, right? Design cars, and every single thing there has been designed by engineering, and every single car company worth its salt will have a R&D team, and so R&D or design and research is a very integral part of the entire production process. So I think, Usha, what Vidya is trying to say is that we already design, but we just learn to design better through a course in I guess, design.
Yeah.
Well, some people are asking us, do we get certificates for this webinar? I mean, I wish we could say that we've upskilled you in some way or the other, but no, we don't have any plans for that this time around. Maybe the next time we conduct a webinar like this, we could maybe give you certificates. Right. Internship opportunities. I think Priya's asking me this question. Are there any internship opportunities in the field of design? Well, I guess Vindhya's gonna have to answer that.
Well, there are, of course, in many places. I guess one is, it depends on what your background is, and two is like in what you're interested in who you would like to work with, and what are the kind of things that you would like to work on. And if you would like to get into, if you've studied something else, if you would like to get into the field of design, or if you would like to learn user experience design a little bit more, I know of a few bootcamp courses also in Bangalore. You could look up this place called Design Shift. So they teach you UX design. They're really good. They help you kind of upskill in a couple of months, and if you go through them, they help you get placed if you're interested in UX design specifically. I'm speaking about UX design specifically right now. But of course, in any other field of design, you could sort of do a search and look it up if you already have the skills for it.
I guess it's such a niche field. I mean, a lot of us will be wondering, how do I even get an internship or an opportunity that's specifically about design and not about the other aspects of a job? So it's an intriguing question.
So, design thinking itself is not specific job. Sometimes there are certain job postings that say design thinking coach or design thinking something. So I have done a bunch of workshops in that capacity, but design thinking itself is broken down. So I told you about like feel, think, do, right? The feel phase is broken down into a separate profession, that is user experience research. The think phase is more of like user experience design strategy, all of that. So how okay, let's take an app like Uber, right? Or I'm constantly using Uber, let's say Swiggy. So if you're going through the feel phase, you realize that okay, now people are living in nuclear families, people are not there are many people who are living alone, they're working full time, they're not having time to cook, or they're not having enough skills to cook. Okay, maybe they need some support in this sense. Okay, we need to support restaurants. So you come up with the idea in the feel phase, and then in the think phase you come up with that's the user experience research, and that will be ongoing even after the product is done. You are constantly going through user experience research because you want to test whether what you've made is still working the same way. Times are changing, people are changing, so we'll always have to constantly keep checking what's working, what's not. Then the middle part, which is the think part, which is user experience design, that's where you will come up with strategy. You can come up with 2D wireframes, come up with how the app should flow, what are all the different things that the app should have. You can come up with all of that in the think phase, and that is user experience design. And then you go into the do phase, which is user interface design, that is UI. So UI would be more of what is the look and feel of this app, what are the colors that are being used, what are the pop-up icons, how is everything, all the details of that design. So this is with reference to say user experience design, where I could more easily talk about design thinking. I'm seeing a lot of job postings for user experience researcher, as well as in many different fields itself. Even as an architect, some of these firms are looking at design strategists to support architects to design, to help them through their design process. Some of them are like that. There are some around farming. I've seen like so many different firms. Right now I was also looking into Byju's, that's looking at user experience research, that's looking for how well their apps are working with children, where are the gaps, what could be better, what's working, what's not working, if something needs to be done. So there's like every industry is now giving more and more importance to say user experience research and UX design, because they're trying to reach people remotely, and that's the only way that they can do it. So
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And indeed, even when we were working on our website, and I mean, we did have to think on the lines of what's the user experience going to be like? What does he or she come into? What is, what's the navigation like? So I can see what you're talking about in the real sense. Okay, Pawan here. Pawan, you're asking you rather, what's the major difference between design with respect to a civil background and with vis-a-vis an architect background, right? So if somebody from, I guess his question, I'm going to paraphrase here. If I come from a civil background vis-a-vis a architect background, how would my experience with design change?
Okay, interesting question. Because architecture is completely involved with designing for the user, and civil engineers are doing a lot of the heavy lifting with designing the structure itself. I'm sure that there has to be, I've always believed that there has to be a lot more of a connect and a conversation between civil engineers and architects, and not just that, there has to be a little more of civil engineering in architecture, and there has to be little more of architecture in civil engineering in the courses itself. I guess there are things that you could do to support better design and architecture because of the kind of knowledge that you already have. Maybe you know about how structures could be designed, how the spans could be designed, Coffert's lab, and all of these things that could take larger spans and things like that. And if you're designing like larger spaces, even offering that as examples and working closely with an architect to to together work for the end user. I think that's the best way to do it as a civil engineer. When I worked as an architect, I worked closely with structural engineers. It would be kind of one-sided in many ways, where architects would say, "Hey, I want you to do this. I want you to do this," and then they would come back and say, "We can't do that. That's ridiculous." And then we'd have like a back and forth. Instead, if everyone just came together and work together, that would be better. There are many architectural firms which have inbuilt civil engineers, inbuilt teams. So that way, working together makes it a lot more easier. I'd say look for places where you could work hand in hand with architects, if you'd like to be more involved with design in that aspect.
So I guess it's also true that a lot of people from a civil engineering. I mean, because I'm just again going to quote from personal experience here. Most architects tend to join architecture firms and then tend to draft and then rise up the ranks, and so they're already always involved in the process of design, whether it's
Mm.
creating ideas for the client and so forth. So I guess on the face of it, it seems closer to the process of design and creating
Yeah.
that impact by way of design. But civil engineers tend to probably use services of
Mhm.
architects, but I guess here's more execution work. I think that's the perception from the outside, is that civil engineers don't tend to design, but I guess that's not true anymore, right? And a lot of individual setups tend to do a bit of the heavy lifting when it comes to basic design, right? Maybe not too innovative. Maybe they would need an architect's design thinking abilities to sort of help with newer ideas, newer designs. But I mean, what's your perspective on that? Because again, I wanted to run this by you, saying, is it true from the outside? It does seem like civil engineers do more of the execution work and not so much of the design work. So if I'm from a civil engineer background, does it mean that I should be studying design because I've never done that kind of work before, or I won't get that kind of exposure in general?
Hmm. There are so many multiple things here, and I also had some more thoughts come up. So to answer a few of your questions, one is, yes, civil engineers do a lot more of the execution than architects. Already architects, while studying architecture, it's like 90% design and 10% of like the drafting and all. And then when you go into work, it's like 90% of your work is working drawings and drafting. You're not really getting that chance to be very creative as an architect either. So even as a civil engineer, of course, there's a lot of just heavy lifting that happens, especially in the early part of your career.
Okay.
Then to what was the other question? One of the things that came to my mind actually was, as a civil engineer, it's not just about the end user. It could even be the process, designing the service or the process itself. Who are all the stakeholders who you're dealing with? You're dealing with architects, you're dealing with builders, you're dealing with construction workers, masonry workers. There's multiple things that you're dealing with. So how could that this entire process of building itself be done really well to the highest quality? So that itself is design thinking. The design thinking could be in that process itself. So for example, I'd say I've seen a lot of construction where a lot of the detailing, a lot of the way things are done, the masonry itself is not very well done. And I've also seen like work where every detail is given a lot of importance to. So what are ways in which everybody, all the stakeholders, could be empowered to come together and do their best? So it could be every discipline automatically becomes a multidisciplinary practice, and by virtue of that, you can it doesn't necessarily also have to be with the end user. The end user itself could be somebody who's reading your drawing and executing on the field. That could be the end user. The end user could be the mason. So designing for that.
And that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. In fact, that does again evoke a thought in me, because I remember this architect relative, and I think an interesting case came up when the building that they were trying to design was very close to water, right, to the ocean. And so the while the design itself was ready, the problem that these guys were facing was when the foundations were being laid, I mean, it was all sand. And you couldn't lay the foundation because you started to dig and it was all sand. It would just flow and fill up whatever space you create. So that was a interesting problem of, you know, a civil engineer, which needed to be solved by way of when you were designing this. You know, the traditional method would not work. So I guess there's also an element of it's going to be case to case. Even as a civil engineer, you're going to have to find creative, innovative solutions in different, you know, points in different projects. And I guess they'll take different forms. And so that's also there.
Yeah.
All right. I think the audience has been incredibly patient. They've been watching us do this back and forth. I certainly hope that we've given you, I mean, Vindhya has given us a very beautiful perspective on how design can possibly pervade every aspect of our lives and our profession. And we have to thank her for that. But I hope you guys, you know, you guys were a lovely audience. I hope to connect with each of you in the future. We will continue to do many more events like this. In fact, just today at 6 p.m. we're doing a panel discussion on you know, the real impact of networking. I know this came up sometime, you know, in this conversation that, hey, it's better if you collaborate, and what better way to collaborate than to network and expand your network of connections. And so that's a topic we're going to touch at 6 p.m. today. Visit our website for the links to that, to register for that workshop. Thanks a lot to everybody who's made this possible. Please do have a great day, and hope to see you guys very soon.
Thank you all. Yes, thank you also, Anand, for hosting this and giving me also a platform to connect with all of you. And of course, many of you have shown interest in doing a full day session. We will get back to you about that also soon. Thank you all so much. Enjoy your weekend.
In case anybody wants to reach out to Vindhya ma'am, do register yourself on our website. We will facilitate, you know, we will make sure that you can connect with her whenever she has the time. So please do visit our website. Bye. Have a great day. And yeah, see you soon.
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay. Bye.